Namaskar. Very warm good evening to one and all present in the today's webinar on the theme corporate fraud, forensic audit and role of CMA. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Wishing you all a very happy, prosperous and blissful New Year 2021. We are organizing this program in association with all other chapters of Odisha. Today we have with us renowned resource person on the topic, respected CMA Alok Kumar Bardhan sir, Assistant Director, Serious Fraud Investigation Office, Kolkata, and CMA Naveen Nigam sir, Chairman Raulkela Chapter of ICAI. Other dignitaries present in this virtual platform, respected CMA Dr. S.C. Mahanti sir, President 2013 and 14 of the Institute, past Chairman of Chapter and EIRC, CMA Devashish Das sir, Srinivas Mahapatra sir, SP Padi, CMA Damodar Mishra, and many more. A Regional Council member of EIRC, esteemed members and stakeholders, Chairman of South Odisha Chapter, Talcher Ongul Chapter, CGK Chapter, Raulkela Chapter, Sambalpur Chapter, Jajpur Chapter, Balasur Chapter and their team members, Chairman of the Chapter, CMA Mukesh Chobe, Secretary of the Chapter, CMA Ajay Kumar Samal, and all my professional colleagues in the Managing Committee. I, CMA Shaktidhar Singh, Chairman, PD Committee of the Chapter, heartily welcome you all to the today's webinar. Dear professional friends, today's topic is very much interesting and new for all of us. Hope today's deliberation on that burning topic will be very much learning and interactive session. Before introducing the resource person, I request our staff of the chapter to play our institute anthem as token of honor to our profession. All are requested to be in folded hand. Thank you. Now it is time to introduce our today's research person. CMA A.K. Bardhan sir is a fellow member of Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He is professionally qualified as a certified fraud examiner from Association of Certified Fraud Examiners USA. He is certified as associate member of Indian Institute of Banking and Finance. He is working with Serious Fraud Investigation Office, the investigation wing of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, for the last 8 years and successfully handled the critical changes, development of a banking data analysis software, setting up of an early warning system for corporate frauds through collation and analysis of corporate data is available in the government database, public domain and social media, leading investigation teams handling investigation into many large corporate frauds. Before his present assignment, he served a public sector bank for 30 years and handled the most challenging assignment of Vigilance Department, Treasury and Foreign Exchange. He is a regular guest faculty of certificate course of Prevention of Money Laundering conducted by Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. As one of the guest faculty at CBI Academy, Ghaziabad, he regularly trains vigilance officers of banks and PSUs on preventive vigilance on corporate frauds. Trendwise Merrill Lynch on credit derivatives in Bangkok in 2004, Directorate of Forensic Science, National Institute of Banking Studies and Corporate Management, CBI Academy, Ghaziabad. As a steering committee member of Kolkata chapter of Professional Risk Manager International Association, he is actively involved in arranging seminars, workshops, and discussion on global best practice in risk management. Thank you, sir, for acceptance of our invitation. Now come to our next resource person, CMA Praveen Nigam sir. CMA Praveen Nigam sir is a fellow member of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He has more than 27 years of rich industry experience. Presently, he is in the position of CGM Finance at Rourkela State Plant, RSP. He is part of managing committee members of ICI Rourkela and presently holding the position as chairman. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. Without taking much of time, now I request our young chairman, CMA Mukesh Chubey, to address.
Thank you, Shakti sir.
Thank you.
A very good evening to one and all present in the today's digital platform. I convey my honest thanks and deep gratitude to all of you present in the virtual platform and encouraging us for conducting educative programs in digital platform since inception of pandemic COVID-19 situation. I wish all a prosperous New Year 2021 and happy Makar Sankranti. It's my great opportunity to welcome you all again to today's event on corporate fraud, forensic audit, and role of CMA. Today's resource person, respected CMA Alok Kumar Vardhan sir and CMA Praveen Nigam sir, our most full of jeep Chairman PD Committee of the chapter, CMA Shaktidhar Singh sir, young dynamic and energetic Secretary CMA Ajay Kumar Samal, senior members, past chairman of chapter, our staff. Also, I would like to wish a happy and blessed birthday to our beloved Shaktidhar Singh sir, who in spite of his birthday party today, sharing his time with us. Thank you, Shakti sir, once again.
Thank you.
For kind information of today's resource person, CMA A.K. Vardhan sir, I would like to briefly highlight about our vibrant chapter, Bhubaneswar chapter. Sir, Bhubaneswar chapter is one of the best chapter in Pan India and providing CMA education to the students and professional services to the members and stakeholders since 1969. At present, we have around 750 members, and this chapter has received best chapter award consecutively time for commendable in all sphere of activity. Only chapter in Pan India who have received brand building award. Sir, during the pandemic situation, we have not stopped our activity and we have tried our level best to conduct activities in virtual platform for our students, members, and stakeholders. Our chapter is the first chapter who provided online classes to the students in Pan India. Today's topic, corporate fraud, forensic audit, and role of CMA, is very interesting and knowledgeable one for our practitioners and stakeholders. We, the CMA professionals, have an important role to detect corporate fraud by way of conducting forensic audit. So today we have with us dignitaries Alok Vardhan sir and Praveen Nigam sir. Let's listen from them. With this, I'm handing over the session to CMA Praveen Nigam sir. Hope this will be an excellent learning session for all of us. Thanking you all. Jai Jagannath.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mukeshji. Thank you, Mukeshji. Let me start. Respected CMA Alok Vardhan, Assistant Director, CS Fraud Investigation Office, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. CMA Dr. Mohanty, CMA Mukesh Chubey, Chairman Bhubaneswar Chapter, CMA Shaktidhar Singh, Chairman PD Committee Bhubaneswar Chapter, CMA Ajay Kumar Samal, Secretary, Bhubaneswar chapter, and all other my fellow CMA colleagues who have joined this webinar. Yes, I am very happy and I feel privileged to be a part of this webinar. As Mr. Mukesh was saying regarding Bhubaneswar chapter, yes, I also say that in Bhubaneswar chapter has been very active and the committee is very enthusiastic and continuously they are organizing various kind of webinar and diversified topics. The topic which they have chosen today, that is corporate fraud, forensic audit and role of CMA, is very relevant, particularly if we see the last decade. In fact, why should I say last decade? In fact, last 25 years, I say 2.5 decades, the kind of corporate fraud which are happening across India and across the world, the role of this forensic auditor is increasing day by day. Whatever I have understood about this topic, I have made a brief presentation I would like to share. Is it visible? Is it visible to all?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Yeah. So on behalf of Rourkela chapter, I will be presenting this topic, corporate fraud, forensic audit and role of CMA. Now you see the topic what has been chosen by Bhubaneswar chapter has three parts. One is corporate fraud. There has to be a fraud, then only we think of forensic audit, and when the forensic audit is there, then how the cost accountant play a role in that, where still it is not very clear to many of the cost accountant who are basically in the audit of cost audit or in some cases income tax audit, or they are in the services. So first we have to understand what we mean by the
Sir, your voice. Sir, I think your voice is not audible, sir.
you can remember the case of if I'm not wrong, Enron. They were multinational and within no time they disappeared from the globe. So when the massive corporate fraud is eventually discovered, it can take down even a huge multinational company with billions in annual revenue. So corporate fraud, what we are discussing, because fraud is something wherever you are not doing something which is as per the procedure, which is as per the guideline, fraud may happen. But when we are talking in this particular topic, we are concerned about the fraud which has certain material element. Some materialistic value has to be there. Otherwise, small fraud, they do happen, but they are dealt by the companies internally through their internal procedures. Now, what kind of fraud can be there? As we all understand that fraud can be theft of cash or physical asset or confidential information can be shared. Accounts can be misused. There can be fraud in the procurement, which happen normally in many of the organizations, that many a time we are making payment for a goods which has not been received by the organization, or the goods are procured at a price which is very high as compared to the market price. There can be a payroll fraud where the employees are not in the payroll, still the payments are made to the employee and is shown in the books of account of a company. There could be a financial accounting misstatement or inappropriate general vouchers or any fraudulent expenses which has been claimed by either employee or promoter or owner of the organization. Now, if you see recent, I have only collected in last, you can say 1 decade, the kind of the quantum of fraud which has taken in this country. I'm not talking about the worldwide. If you see in the case of Vijay Mallya and PNB case, it is hovering around 9,000 crore. In the case of Colgate scam, it is 1.86 lakh crore. 2G spectrum, it was 1.76 lakh crore. You see Commonwealth, 70,000 crore. Of Bofors scandal, 64 crore. Yeah, Nirav Modi, 11,000 crore. Yeah, Augusta Westland. So the kind of fraud which has happened in last 1 decade, that has raised an idea that there has to be a forensic audit, because in all these companies where this fraud has happened, normal audit was going on under the companies, like whether it is a statutory audit or cost audit or even income tax audit or earlier VAT audit were there, or GST audit, rather. But in spite of all those things, fraud has happened. So when we think of the forensic audit, first another thing is, you can say the fraud. Now, fraud can be done by the single person. We have to understand between the fraud and the corruption. Fraud can be done by the single person. A particular person without involving anybody can still do the fraud in a company. But when we talk about corruption, corruption involves 2%. There has to be 2%, then only the corruption takes place. This is my understanding about the topic. Now, when we discuss about the fraud which is not detected through normal audit, then only we talk about the forensic audit. Forensic audit, when we say forensic audit, the word forensic itself means scientific collection of data. So you are doing a kind of audit which is in the nature of investigation. You are collecting data scientifically so that it can be proved in the court of law. Whereas in the normal course of the audit, what we do, it is basically a compliance audit, whether all the compliance have been done or not. And in most of the cases, auditors are relying basically on the information presented by the management. There is no reason to disbelieve that the information with the management is presented. There is some material mismanagement in that information. But when we go for the forensic audit, normally we always start with the investigative mind and with a idea in the back of our mind that whatever is presented, there is something which we have to unearth, and the information which is provided to us on the face value of that information, it may not be correct. So we have to be a questioning brain, questioning mind. And normally क्या है कि other जो normal audit हैं, they are basically governed by some of the institute, whether it is Companies Act or whether it is GST Act or whether it is Income Tax Act or whether internal audit, that is also governed by the there is a statutory requirement to have an internal audit. But forensic audit basically is an audit which happen only when an event happen. There has to be a trigger point, then only the forensic audit can take place. So the difference between forensic audit and the normal audit is that the normal audit is regarding the compliance of a procedure, compliance of the institute. But this forensic audit is basically an investigative audit. It is more of a जैसे हम नॉर्मल फोरेंसिक केस में या इन्वेस्टिगेशन केस में सुनते हैं, उसी तरह का है. आपको you have to have a out of box thinking. You have to have a questioning brain. Then only you can succeed and you can go deep into the subject and find out whether any fraud, any misdoing has happened or not. Now, the goal of the forensic audit, as I have already said, is to find out who perpetrated the fraud, how the fraud was perpetrated, and how much money or other assets the company has lost as a result of fraud, reviewing internal control system of the organization, whether there is any flaw in the internal control, because there can be loopholes in the internal control which can be used by that those persons who are involved in this kind of fraudulent activity. Then conducting a penetrating testing and providing the litigation support, because whatever the report is submitted by a forensic auditor, that has to be corroborated by the evidences which can be proved in the court of law. So the point is that the evidences collected during the course of forensic audit has to be robust and can be proved so that it can be proved in the court of law. Now, when we talk about the technique, there are basically two techniques. One is critical point auditing. It is that filtering of the symptom of the fraud from the regular and the normal transaction in which they are mixed or concealed for this purpose. Financial statement, books, record, etc. analyzed. And another is proprietary audit, which normally since I am working in a public sector, I have faced it is basically done in our case by the government auditor, that is proprietary audit, whether the expenditure which we have incurred, there is any loss to the exchequer or not. So there are two type of technique. One is critical point audit and another is proprietary audit as far as this forensic audit is concerned. And some more common technique which is used by these those persons who are involved in this fraudulent activities are, one is skimming, that is rapidly reading. And this is something which I would like to say that we all should be very careful, because I have also have an experience. It is basically reading rapidly. When we are working on a computer, many a time we are not aware that the people who are standing by our side, they might be seeing the password which we are typing on our keyboard, and they can see the password and they can use that particular password and do the fraud. In the same way, in the case of ATM also, many a time it's suggested that when you are using the ATM, going in the ATM, you should not allow other person to enter, otherwise your password can be compromised. Then another technique is lapping technique, where this occur when the employee alter the accounts of an organization in order to hide a theft of cash. This is done by diverting the payment from one customer and then hiding the theft, and by diverting cash from another customer to offset the receivable from the first customer. So this is another technique through which the fraud is taking place in the corporate world. Then the third is regarding that is padding. That common fraud includes padding or inflating the claim. Means when I am submitting a claim, I am inflating my claim and getting the reimbursement. In fact, if you must have heard one news I heard about the Walmart, one of the director of the Walmart was removed from their board for doing this kind of padding activity in which they were submitting their personal claim to the company and getting the reimbursement. So this is another way the fraud can take place. Now the question arises why the forensic audit is at all important. Now you see, we have said that in the case of normal audit, it is basically a compliance audit, whereas the forensic audit is an investigating audit. So forensic auditors audit are commissioned, and there is no statute which says that every company has to go for the forensic audit. It is a need based. If some event happens, then the company go for the forensic audit. So forensic audit are commissioned in response to an event and involve financial investigation whose findings are used in the evidence of court as evidence in court. So the main point is that the finding of the forensic audit has to be such that it can be used as evidence in the court. On the other hand, financial audit are designed to measure compliance with the reporting standard and verify if the company's book represents a true and fair view of a financial position, but they are not intended to detect the material fraud unless something is brought before them. Otherwise, normally in the case of financial audit, auditors are relying on the statement given by the management, and that is also appearing in their report. So the difference gets reflected in the auditor's report. Now the question arises, why should I care when there are so many? The person can ask, when there are so many kind of audit. As a common man, why should I care whether forensic audit should be there or not? Why it is so important? So I would say that you as a minority shareholder, owner, or manager have a lot to lose from a corporate fraud. Fraud happens more often than we think. We may think, and the cost of the fraud is so high that we cannot even imagine. As I've shown in the list of 8 to 9 fraud what I have listed in last 1 decade, they were hovering in the range of from 9,000 crore to 1 lakh or 2 lakh thousand crore. So the amount in which the fraud are taking place, we cannot imagine, and the aftermath of the fraud can leave a company reeling for a long while. So if I'm working in an organization, a fraud takes place, then it may also impact me. If I'm a shareholder of that company, it may impact the market value of that particular share. Even a whip of a governance should in the stock market can cause instant value dissemination, tarnishing the company's reputation in the market. So forensic audit in such cases can help the management to disapprove allegation or provide concrete evidence of a fraud that is useful to the regulator. SEBI recently has asked listed companies to make prompt stock exchange disclosure when a forensic audit is commissioned and share the full report when such audit are concluded, and you must watch out for such notification as a shareholder. So bottom line is, the sooner the corporate ecosystem and the government regulator and the society understand the importance of the forensic audit, is better, the better it will be for the stakeholders. So we have to understand the importance of the forensic audit, and if we understand this, the importance of forensic audit, and bring it within the framework of a statute, where this kind of audit is made compulsory from the statute, then only we can take care of the what should I say? We can take care of the stakeholders and their benefit. Now the question arises, what as a cost accountant we can play a role. In my opinion, it is still very dicey, not very clear how as a cost accountant we will play a special role, because in our sister institute there is a particular course where you can have a short course on the forensic audit, but as far as we are concerned, that is not very clear to the CMAs, particularly those who are in the practice, because whatever I have gathered or whatever I have met the CMA, we are basically interested in this cost audit, or in some cases this income tax audit, or maybe internal audit. So if we can include fraud as a part of our cost audit also, probably that will also give some benefit as a profession. One more thing I will say, because I am in a service, I am working for an organization. As a CMA, I feel that I am the first auditor of my company. So if I ensure that all the rules and regulation, all the procedures and all the institutes are complied with and adhered to, then chances of fraud are normally minimized, or you can say it is eliminated. So what is important is, first we have to have a knowledge base. A sound knowledge base only can help us in detecting the fraud and in avoiding the fraud. If we do not have a knowledge, then even if we are working as a forensic auditor, probably it will be very difficult for us to detect the fraud. So as far as the role of the cost accountant is concerned, I think this needs to be deliberated further, and in my opinion, some course has to be introduced so that we can create a kind of expert in this particular area, and then only as a CMA we can contribute in the area of forensic audit. Though forensic audit is not statutorily required, if we have a questioning brain, if we have an out-of-box thinking, probably still we can become a very good forensic auditor. So this is what I wanted to share about my understanding of the topic. So now it's up to Mr. Mukesh.
Thank you, sir, for your nice big presentation regarding corporate fraud and forensic audit. Now I would like to request our today's research person, CMA Alok Kumar Bardhan sir, kindly address.
Thank you very much, friends. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
It's definitely a matter of pleasure and pride to be with you. Thank you very much for inviting me in this session. I am honored. And it is really good to know that almost all chapters of the entire state of Odisha is with us. And it was a good start by my previous speaker. It was really a good head start. Let's go to the subject. And since time is limited, we have already half an hour, it's over. It's a long thing we have to go. And before 15 minutes, I will try to close so that we can have a question answer session. Let's start it. We need to know where from this forensic audit, why this forensic audit has been so much important as on date. It is not only today, though we are hearing about this forensic audit thing only for the last, say, 4 or 5 years. But the fact is that for years long, that auditors believed that their responsibility was limited to providing reasonable assurance of the financial statements and the books of accounts. Auditors believed and tried to state that it is the role of the management to implement internal control systems that will prevent the occurrence of frauds or any other material misstatements. On the other hand, general public, users of financial information, they believed that the primary role of the auditor is to detect errors and frauds. This was the primary difference between the auditor's expectation and the stakeholders' expectations. This
Sir, it is not visible.
It's not visible.
Yes, sir. Open the PPT, sir. It is not open.
It's very much. What's happening? I have.
Sir, you have to share it. You have to share it.
I have shared it.
No, sir. That is your office file is shown. Now it is shown.
Now it is there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, please make it full screen, sir.
I am doing it.
It is okay, sir.
Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
The first slide,
Yes.
which I have talked about.
Auditor's expectation.
Okay.
Yes.
The next one. Now, this gap, which is between the actual role of the auditor and the accounting information user's perception about the role of the auditor, is known as the auditor's expectation gap. This auditor's expectation gap has got two components. One, the difference between what the society expected the auditors to achieve and what they can reasonably expect to accomplish is known as the reasonableness gap. What is this? This is like this, that I can expect the auditor to touch the moon, but which may not be practically possible. So it is not that whatever I as an user of an audit report expecting from the auditor is always reasonable. There is a reasonable fact, there is a reasonableness which is to be required to be achieved by the auditor. So this gap is called the reasonableness gap. Okay. Second one is the difference between the responsibilities society reasonably expect of auditors and the auditors actually performing. It is known as the performance gap. So what has happened is that this component of these two gaps is called the auditor's expectation gap, and this created a lot of difference between what the auditors delivered and what the society expected. Problem is this: there was always a conflict of interest between the auditors and between the auditors and the users. It was always difficult to criticize the person who signed the paycheck of the auditors, right? Further, due to this expectation gap, there had been some recent policy changes in the country. Someone is speaking. Can you please mute your mic? Well, let us continue. Companies Act 2013. Very stringent auditor's responsibility. Section 139 to 146 discuss about auditors and puts enormous responsibility on the auditors. Section 143 says, if an auditor has sufficient reasons to believe that an offense involving fraud is being or has been committed against the company by the officers or employees of the company, the auditor will have to report the matter to the central government as may be prescribed. This provision of this section, the provisions of this section applies for both the cost accountants as well as company secretary, everyone. Further, if any auditor, cost accountant or company secretary in practice do not comply with the provisions of this subsection, he shall be punishable with fine, which shall not be less than 1 lakh rupees, but which may extend to 25 lakh rupees, now amended for 5 lakh rupees, and 1 lakh rupees for listed companies and 1 lakh rupees for other companies. The audit rules clarify that in case of criminal liability, the liability will devolve only on the concerned partner or partners who acted in fraudulent manner or abetted or, as the case may be, colluded in that fraud, in any fraud. So, situation now is not that auditors can say that only internal control and detection of fraud is completely on the management. Situation is now the auditors has got an enormous responsibility towards detecting of fraud. Scenario changed from there. present laws of the land focuses on fraud prediction or detection by auditors. Professionals are now concerned that the new legal binding may act as a deterrent for the new generation to take up regular audit as in the profession. We have seen this. We have our CGM sir over here. We have seen this. We are seeing this in the case of new generation chartered accountants who are not that much interested to take up regular audit in the profession. Though Institute of Chartered Accountants of India are really gearing up for the purpose of forensic audit. Further, now we have this insolvency and bankruptcy code. It requires professionals who have the ability to prepare and submit effective resolution process. Resolution process does not mean liquidation only. It is a plan and to extract and add values to the available assets. For a successful resolution process, it is imperative that the resolution professional must have the ability to dig out or identify and detect the reasons what has gone wrong for the defaulting corporate debtor. So here comes, for the point 3, here comes the usage of the forensic auditors. Further, section 43 to 46 of IBC, section 50, section 66 are the key sections for forensic auditors. The focus now is on personal guarantees given by the promoter directors and KMPs, key manager personnel. Tracing the assets created out of the borrowed fund diversified is a major challenge. Forensic audit is the only solution which is available even for the insolvency professionals. The application of Benami transactions prohibitions that has been envisaged in IBC. Now, as our previous speaker has already told, forensic audit and forensic accounting, often these two words are used simultaneously. There are two types of frauds basically. One, fraud in or against the business, which are perpetrated by employees, third parties like vendors or clients, either individually or in connivance, which affects the business negatively. Fraud by the business, perpetrated by the management. Some names has already been spoken, which comes under the fraud by the business. These are perpetrated by the management or promoters, wherein public at large, government, shareholders, investors, financial institutions, they are due. So these two types of frauds are there. The difference is in the expectation, forensic audit and forensic audit accounting. The difference is in the expectation. When management appoints a forensic accountant, they expect detailed analysis of the existing financial management system and recommendation for improvement. This is what is forensic accounting for. On the other hand, forensic auditors are appointed either by the government agencies, lenders, body of investors interest protection, that is like SEBI, or insolvency professionals. Both assignments may lead to legal complication. However, the compulsion of money trailing and evidence collection is much more in forensic audit, since it looks into the loopholes in the existing laws of the land. So, the dictionary meaning of the word forensic is relating to or denoting the application of scientific methods and techniques to the investigation of crime, whereas audit means an artificial inspection of an organization's accounts, typically by an independent body or a systematic review of an assessment of a series of events. Any legal definition of forensic audit is yet to be evolved. So, forensic audit means, since the word forensic is objectively related with investigation of criminal activities, it is accepted that the forensic audit function is used only for the situations when there is a suspected crime, and generally white collar crime. The moot questions are, whether there is any set pattern or rule book of forensic audit? Answer is no. Is there any boundary or area within which forensic audit function need to be closed? Answer is no. What are the expectations of the client who engage forensic auditor and how far the expectations can be met? This is one question. Expectation of the client is simple. Recovery of the damages to the client coupled with effective prosecution of the person or group of persons who caused the damage. Right? So expectation of client is simple. Now we go to the determinants of an effective forensic audit report. How we say that this forensic audit report is effective. We have to identify the fraud or fraudulent financial reporting at sourcing stage, including, please note here, including forged, fake, manipulated documents. Second challenge, identification of money trail to find out the beneficiary, the amount defrauded. We will have to be successful to find out the money trail. Collecting clinching documentary evidences for legal use purpose. Next, ability to relate the evidences in the series of events in the report. Ability to link the findings with the violations of the laws of the land supported by evidence. So these are the determinants of an effective forensic audit report. What are the challenges? Obviously, one forensic auditor has to know the applicable law of the land. Second challenge, which is very unfortunate, that authority level, a forensic auditor, they generally do not have the authority to examine books or documents or persons other than the client. In our case, in government agency, we have an authority level. We can call for documents for an investigation. We can ask anyone to be present. We can summon anyone. So we have the authority. But the forensic auditors, they do not have that kind of authority. So their job is much more challenging because they will have to work on a limited resources where the major challenge lies. Third, the assignment given is based on a mere suspicion. And the expectation of the client is that that suspicion will have to be zeroed in, and that is the expectation will have to be fulfilled from that limitless sources. What is this limitless? Why I have said limitless? Because remember, is there any boundary of forensic audit? There is no boundary. You cannot say that forensic audit is, you should not say rather, forensic audit is limited to in the checking of books and books of accounts and all that within for the last 2 years. That is silly. This way forensic audit does not happen. Well, if you have to start it, you will have to finish it, you will have to go to the end, and the ultimate objective is as given in the previous slide. You will have to find out the money trail. You will have to collect clinching evidences, documentary evidences. You will have to have the report should have the ability to relate the evidences in the series of events. Only then a forensic audit is successful. Now, looking here, lack of clarity in the books of the client itself and non-availability of expectation of document at client side. What is this? One bank appoints a forensic auditor for, say, some NPA account or something. Definitely, the forensic auditor will start with the statement of account, maybe of that client. What does he see? Let us see. See here, A statement of account generally has date, credit, debit, balance, and a narration. This narration field is the most important for finding out where the money has gone or misutilization of money or so. In many of the statements, you will find simply blank narration fields. You see, narration fields are blank. So this is what kind of documents you will have to work. And these are the limitations, practical realities, which you will have to face to bridge the gaps of the documents. What are the specialty needed? You will have to be able to identify financial statement misrepresentations. You will have to be able to calculate the economic damages actually done, fraud prevention, detection and response, valuation of available assets, bankruptcy, insolvency, and reorganization. You must have legal knowledge. You must have computer forensic analysis skill. There is a research white paper, which I am just showing, I can share it, which speaks about the characteristics and skills of the forensic accountant. And it's a large 34-page report. I will share it if required. Now let us see from the simple forensic fraudulent financial reporting. What are these? Look at this. It's way back. The cat is out of the bag. Now everybody knows, but still 2006 to 2007, revenue growth was 33%. 2007 to 2008, revenue growth was 46%. We need not look at more. Thing is that, does not it raises eyebrow? Is it normal? It should have been seen at that very point of time when Satyam was reporting this kind of growth. Let's see key indicators and varieties of fraudulent financial reporting. This document also I will share if you require. See, section B1 is the most important. It is the fraudulent financial reporting wheel. In the revenue side, we have false sales and debtors, advancing or delaying revenue, manipulation of rebates and discounts, etc., etc. On the expenses side, under or over accruals, delaying or advances expenses, this. In inventory, standard cost manipulation, false ownership status. In cash, false cash entries, hidden pledges of cash deposits. In others, misuse of margin reserves, suppressed or false claims. All these things, this creates the fraudulent financial reporting. There are some specific examples given in this section, that what are the possible ways of fraudulent reporting in revenue, expenses, inventories, etc., etc. Now, the next challenge, evidence collection. Identify benefits and intention. Fact is, establishing money trail is not sufficient. Evidence that the money was misappropriated for personal benefits or use of asset creation is important. Yes. It is not necessary that all trails have to be identified. Sufficient number of examples will do. Example, term loan obtained through fraudulent financial reporting was diverted through fictitious transactions with entry operators to another partnership or proprietorship firm of the director. So, If we only establish the money trail, until and unless we reach to the partnership or proprietorship form of the director himself, we are unable to establish that the money was misappropriated for personal benefits. So 1 or 2 transactions of the funds diversion, 1 or 2 or 3 steps is not going to sufficient until and unless we can reach to the level of this directors or proprietorship or partnership form. So the intention is proved. The criminal intent is important. So the actions of the suspects need to be proved as well planned or preconceived. Evidence collected should prove that the action was intentionally done to circumvent the existing law of the land. Repeated act over a considerable period strengthens the evidence. Evidence is best when accepted by the accused. Second best when certified by third party who may be called as witnesses. The last is to finalize evidences. Get the transaction certified by bankers as required to make it undisputable, or here I have written bankers, it can be any other person who can be related to and can be brought to the court of law as witness. Should reveal the complete transaction as far as possible, support with statements recorded, and make a list of witnesses. Essential traits and characteristics of a forensic auditor is that he or she must be analytical, detail-oriented, ethical, responsive, insightful, inquisitive, intuitive, persistent, skepticism, evaluative, function well under pressure, generate new ideas and scenarios. Core skills must be effective oral communicator. He must be able to simplify the information, critical and strategic thinker. He can identify key issues. He must have the auditing skills, investigating ability, etc., etc. This is one of the first line is very typical, but fact is this: he must be able to think like the wrongdoer. The best investigator is who can think like a fraudster. He should understand the goals of the case. He should be able to tell the story, what has actually happened. He can see the big picture. He can organize in an unstructured situation, because for every forensic auditor, whenever he takes up the assignment, the situation is quite unstructured. He will have to be able to structure the situation, and he must have a research skill, because he will have to dig out a number of things from all resources, including social media available. These are the enhanced skills. He must have a sufficient knowledge of rules of evidence and civil procedure. He must have the interviewing skills. These are all the skills which are expected of a forensic auditor. This one, investigative intuitiveness. Fact is this: the clients are unanimous on the statement that intuition can only be learned from experience and cannot be classroom taught. It is a thing which requires to be developed over a period of time. Intuition is that. And the more intuition a forensic auditor do have, more successful he is. These are the 5 most frequent reasons why forensic accountants are ineffective. They are unable to simplify the information. They are unable to communicate effectively. They do not understand the goals of the case. They are unable to identify the key issues. All this. This is, I have seen in my life a number of forensic audit reports, and these are the excuses. The subject entity, that is the company or so, they are non-cooperative. Hence, examination of books of accounts could not be possible, kind of. See, you are going as a forensic auditor. He knows that you are going to screw him. You are your objective is to bring him to the court of law. Please do not expect cooperation from him. He is not going to. He is never ever going to give you his weak points on a platter. Surprisingly, I have seen many forensic audit reports which says management did not give the books of accounts, blah, blah, blah. How do you expect it? No, you have to manage it somehow. Get those books of accounts, get those things, get from other, if it is not books of accounts, get the financial statements from the banks, anywhere else. Please do not expect that the client will be cooperative. This is the first thing where general auditors do falter. Because general auditors, they have an expectation that management will be providing them everything on a platter. Let us not discuss about the good quality of kaju and coffee and all that. Generally, auditors expect that too. But in case of a forensic audit, life is not that simple. You will have to dig it out where from you can. That is your challenge. You will have to start with nothing, zero, and you will have to move slowly. So, client could not provide key documents like original sanction document, restructuring process notes, etc. Do not say all that in your report, please. And usage of word like suspicious. Suspicion में कुछ नहीं होता, कुछ भी नहीं होता. आपके suspicion आपके पास रखो. You will have to prove it in the court of law. So, usage of a word in a forensic audit report like suspicious, usage of word like suspicious is simply useless. Either you bring the exact evidence, documents, statements, prove the case, otherwise it is going to be in trash. So these are the common forensic audit flows I have seen in my lifetime, a number of such cases. Fortunately or unfortunately, they are earning fees also. But I don't know. Forensic audit is not a cakewalk. Simply and straight. Expect the worst and plan accordingly. Imagination, intuition, and exploration of possibilities with determination are the key. Now coming to the point of CMA advantage. Why the CMAs can be much more successful in the field of forensic audit. Look at this. What is the component of the stock statement submitted before every calculation of the DP in a working capital demand loan account? Which side is heavy? Raw material or finished goods? Has anyone ever done a horizontal analysis period over period over these components vis-a-vis the plant capacity coupled with purchase, sale, debtor, creditor book of the suspect? Trust me, I have seen that banks have sanctioned working capital loan on the basis of projected turnover or whatever, and they have not even thought what is the capacity, plant capacity. I have seen that. Working capital has been sanctioned. पूछो तो बोलते हैं हम लोग ट्रेडिंग भी करते थे सर. अरे ट्रेडिंग करते तो उसको भी तो ब्रेकअप होगा. हम लोग टर्म लोन के एप्लीकेशन किया था सर. We had a plan to increase. तो भाई ठीक है, टर्म लोन सैंक्शन हो जाए, प्लांट इंस्टॉल हो जाए, उसके बाद वर्किंग कैपिटल दो ना, कुछ भी नहीं देखता। हो रहा है ऐसा, हुआ है। प्रोडक्ट मिक्स, does anyone look into the product components, the percentage required in the final product, the cost of each component, and breakup of the purchase line? Apart from this maize, soya, which are the maximum majority component, there are some medicines which are costly part. These medicines, they were buying which is disproportionate to their entire production in the annual production. So these are the areas wherein cost accountants can be much more effective, I believe, than any other professionals. Third, the suppliers. Are they traders or manufacturers? Why the subjects you were purchasing from traders and not from manufacturers? Obviously, many of them were dummy suppliers or entry operators giving entry to the business so that bank's fund could have been siphoned off. The two ingredients of intuition, breadth of experience and depth of knowledge. Thus, to enhance intuition, a forensic auditor should choose from varied challenges and go into maximum possible depth of each case. So we had something, so far we discussed something about forensic audit, what are the requirements, what is the expectations, why forensic audit, and let us talk a little bit about fraud. This is white collar crimes, first defined by Sutherland in 1939. It is a crime committed by a person of respectability and high social status in the course of his occupation. These crimes are financially motivated, non-violent, and committed by business or government professionals. Let's look at this. Fraud definitions. Section 25 of IPC. Please look at the underlined portion. Intent to defraud. Section 70 of Indian Contract Act. Intent to deceive. Section 447 of Companies Act 2013, probably the best definition of fraud till now came. Here also we see intent to deceive. So, for reporting a fraud, the intention is sufficient. The intention to defraud or deceive is sufficient to call the act as a fraud. Actual loss, financial or otherwise, is not important. Therefore, attempted fraud, wherein the loss has not actually been suffered, is equally important for the purpose of reporting. So, to my auditor friends, attempted fraud is equally important to be reported. Let's see this. After a housing loan sanctioned by a bank branch for construction of a house on a piece of land was declared NPA, branch officials initiated the process of a surveying. It was observed that no construction has been made in the piece of land. However, the price of the land mortgage has appreciated so much that it will cover bank's dues plus interest. I asked your views, basically, though you cannot answer it right now, whether it should be reported as a fraud or not. Answer is definitely yes. Though there is no loss, it has to be reported as fraud. Let us talk about some global scenario regarding fraud. It is the report to the nations to the 2020 of Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. It speaks that typical organization loses 5% of revenues of each year, and projected global fraud loss is $4.5 trillion. The longer a fraud lasted, the greater is the financial damage. Median loss at the estimate scheme that lasted more than 5 years caused a median loss of $850,000. Asset misappropriations are the most common, occurring in 86% of the case, but the least costly. Only 10% of the cases involve financial statement fraud. Note this, please. Only 10% of the cases involve financial statement fraud, but those cases had the greatest financial impact with a median loss of $1 million approx. Corruption is the most common scheme in every global region and occurs in 43% of the cases. Owners, executives committed only 20% of occupational frauds, but that caused the largest loss. The banking and financial service, government and public administration were the most represented sector in the fraud cases. Most occupational fraudsters are first-time offenders. In 40%, the victim organization decided not to refer these cases. So, bad publicity ke liye. Collusion helps employees evade independent checks and other anti-fraud control. The more individuals involved in a fraud scheme, the higher the losses tend to be. This is ACFE reporting. Fraud perpetrators tended to display behavioral warning signs that they engaged in their crimes. That is common. That we know that if someone starts making extra money, it shows. The person will start wearing costlier shirts, costlier dresses. It shows generally. The most common people are living beyond means. This is one chart of various types of frauds which can happen. I think one should study this, that what are the processes of frauds that can happen. Asset misappropriation is the largest one. There is so many things. And it has got quite a lot of items for the interested audience to study. Go to each of the type and study it, Google it, study it. What is this all about? So, thank you. Questions from your side, please.
Sir, good evening. My name is Siva Prasad Padi. Thank you for your very nice presentation. Also, Praveen sir. Sir, SFIO being an organization which is actively involved in fraud detection and investigation, a practicing cost accountant as a freelancer, what are the opportunities like apart from SFIO? There are agencies like maybe ED or maybe CBI or maybe IB. How to approach and how to be a part, of the investigation team as a freelancer? by any professional accountant like a CMA who's into practice. We hear sometimes, in fact, we some of us also we have rendered some services indirectly. But is there any scope to render our service directly to these agencies? And if yes, how to approach them and how to get
Well,
into?
my department is engaging some firms, but till now it is CA firms. They are engaging, but trust me, it's quite stringent scrutiny procedure. Number one, this is one. To be engaged as a firm, this is as a when you have talked about the word freelancer. Second, my organization also appoints consultants, professionals. There are some definitely those opportunities are available in the website. One can apply, but as a consultant, again, you will have to be appointed for a 6 months or 12 months period, and that is a completely 9 to 6 job. I have seen many of the professionals, they joined, but they could not bear with the pressure. They preferred that they are freelancing, or freedom is much better than being in a 9 to 5 thing. So that is it. These are the scopes which are available. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. If allowed, I have another question.
Please,
Sir,
please.
yeah, very often we hear about cyber frauds, digital you can say digital frauds, which are very common in day-to-day life, as well as some of the organizations are even now facing cyber frauds. So how to particularly deal with cyber frauds as an individual?
I will see. Well, let me tell you very frankly. These cyber frauds are generally, these are individual frauds. Okay. Today's topic is on corporate frauds, which is a big ticket things. Cyber frauds is probably something else which needs to be discussed, and there are a lot of discussions, lot of items available you can go through. Some basic rules. I will say only one basic rule, please don't be greedy. Enough. Every time anyone has fallen into this kind of thing, is the 99% reason is greed. They passed their PIN or something, or sent ₹10 to somewhere. Only yesterday, one of my wife's friend, she lost something around 2 lakh rupees. One Airtel person came, wanted person called up. Something they showed that your connection will be cut off, this, that, and she fallen into trap. So a lot of discussions are over, but I don't think this is the exact platform to discuss all this. Okay. Next.
Sir, one question is asking by CMA Niranjan Mishra sir. Despite of monitoring and control mechanism, frauds are happening. What are the way out?
See, it's an evolving thing. Fraudsters, let me tell you one thing very clearly. No government can tighten the mechanism so much that the life of real people, general people, gets dizzy. It's not possible. We should not tighten all mechanisms so much that general people does not get their facilities. Bank frauds do happen. Does it mean that we will tighten it so much that even genuine borrowers, they do not get the loan? Will it run the economy? No, it's not possible. It's not doable also. So for every cases, in every scenario, for general people, for good people, government will have to keep some loose ends. But fraudsters take the advantage of these loose ends. That is again tightened. As I was discussing just the last question, someone was talking about this cyber fraud. You remember this OTP system was not there when these digital transactions came. It came on a later date. So this is one check. This will evolve continuously. Fraudsters will be there, we will be there. And friend, if frauds are not happening, where we will go? Please tell. When the police, CBI, SFIO people, they will all be jobless, right? So this will be continuous. This will be a continuing thing. Police system will be there, thieves will be there. Okay, this is life is all about. And we are controlling one by one. Every fraud is an experience to us. Every fraud is an experience to us. We learn from that and all that.
Sir, is it like once you go for blockchain accounting, the number of fraud cases and will reduce and it will be controlled to a great extent?
See, blockchain is definitely one of the methodology, but yet to be adopted by everyone, right? Blockchain, it is very good to hear about, but again, this is evolving. Let us see how many companies, how many organizations can take this kind of blockchain technology. And trust me, in the blockchain also there will be. I am a strong believer that in this blockchain also one day or other there will be some questions, something will happen, may happen. I am not that hopeful that if it is blockchain nothing will happen. No, it's not that. Every system do have its own fault, and these fraudsters are quite smart. They will find out the gaps. Again, we will plug. There will be damages, there will be repairing, and we will make the life of the fraudsters difficult with stringent laws, with stringent practices. Next.
One query is by CMA Shiva Prasad. Is there any scientific process followed in forensic audit than regular audit? So why forensic audit?
I have told that already. See, if you are talking about forensic and science, if you are mixing these two, the word forensic is related to detection of crime, detection of a particular thing. That is why the word forensic is used. Okay. And scientific process, yes, if it is required, it will be done. If we have to use the help of forensic sciences, we will have to use. But it is not necessarily that there will have to be use of forensic sciences. Forensic audit, even if you do with simple, which we are doing mostly, there is no handwriting expert, there is no fingerprint expert, still it is forensic audit. If you are using your objectivity towards finding the crime. Okay. So you are probably asking why the name is forensic. It is forensic because it is objective to find out the criminality in the audit. That is why the word forensic is used. Okay. Next.
Anyone having any queries may post in the chat box or directly unmute your mic and interact with our research person. No question.
Mr. Singh, please accept my best of wishes for your birthday. Actually, and it's a great day. On such a day, you are giving time for us. That is also we are all definitely blessed. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is no question at all. Actually, our program was up to 8:30, but it is fairly closed.
Mr. Saktidhar, before you end the program, only thing I would like to say that this role of cost accountant in this forensic audit in particular, we can have some more deliberation in this because this is still an area where clarity is not there in most of the participants. How as a cost accountant we can contribute in forensic audit, particularly those who are in practice.
Okay, sir.
Well, I have one point over here. Sejam sir, you are also mentioning this. This I was discussing quite a time with the institute. Yes, I fully appreciate and agree with you that there has to be, and it is very much urgent today, that our institute should have a cost of forensic audit program, certification program,
Yes.
which the CA Institute already have, and we are already delayed. Trust me, we are already delayed. Quite a lot we are delayed. So it's a pain. It's a pain to me as a fellow member of the institute. So please, to all of you, my earnest request will be, please arrange for starting the course, certificate course as early as possible.
Yes.
Until and unless the course starts, the cost accountants, I do not know what is the doubt in the minds of the cost accountant or the practicing cost accountants that they cannot be a forensic auditor or something like that. Please trust me, it is not that. I am a cost accountant. I am a cost accountant, and I am proud for the fact that I have delivered to this nation, to the country, almost a majority of my life, and which of course relates to this forensic audit and forensic accounting. If I can be successful, every cost accountant can be successful. Only thing, we have to think differently. The intuition, we have to be able to think differently, one. And it is not a cakewalk. One needs to understand. One needs to understand that you will have to be able to read between the lines. And it is not only for these words, is not only for cost accountants only, for anyone, any person per se. Any person per se, if you have to be successful in forensic audit, I have listed in my presentation what are the ingredients and what are the things you have to have. Every cost accountant do have that kind of quality, may have that kind of quality, and every cost accountant can be a successful forensic auditor. Issue to them is probably an acceptable certification. Let our institute please arrange that.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind presence and delivering us
Thank you.
with this bonding topic. Thank you for nice presentation. Now I would like to request CMA Ajay Kumar Samal, Secretary of ICA Bhubaneswar chapter, to give formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sakti sir. Namaskar to all present in today's webinar on corporate fraud, forensic audit and role of CMA, organized by ICA Bhubaneswar chapter in association with all other chapter of Odisha. A warm and cherished evening to our most valued honorable research person, CMA Alok Bardhan sir, and CMA Praveen Nigam sir, Chairman, CMA Mukesh Chubey sir, Chairman PD Committee, CMA Shaktidhar Singh sir, members of the Managing Committee of the Bhubaneswar chapter and other chapter at Odisha. My dear CMA friends and everyone present in today's digital platform. It is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of these who have extended their wholehearted support to make this webinar a grand success once again. On behalf of organizing team and entire fraternity of the Institute, first of all, convey my sincere thanks to Almighty for making today's evening a grand success. By His blessing and grace, we are able to conduct the series of events in virtual platform. I give a really heartfelt vote of thanks to our research person, CMA Bardhan sir and CMA Nigam sir, who have spent their busiest time gracing this occasion. Today, we had the opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this is definitely encouraging us in our professional career. Both of your thoughts have enlightened our minds and shown us a new path. Thanks to all the speakers for adorning the occasion and sharing their opinions today. A special thanks and deep sense of appreciation to our beloved Chairman Mukesh Chubey sir and CMA Shaktidhar Singh sir for their untiring and continuous effort for conducting series of program in virtual platform. I also convey thanks to all the members of Managing Committee, Chairman and their team members of all other chapter at Odisha for the effort and moral support to make the event successful again. Finally, our sincere gratitude goes to the wonderful participants, well-wishers who have participated overwhelmingly for rock solid support and encouragement. Thank you very much for joining this event. Here I announce closure of session. Namaskar. Thank you all.
Thank you, CMA Ajay Kumar Samal, Secretary of our chapter.
Thank you,
Sir,
sir.
if possible and if permit, we will also do this program in a offline mode. Once again, we will also request you, sir.
Frankly, it is really very much boring to talk to a dumb computer, you know.
But thanks for the suggestion, Bardhan sir, that our institute should do a program course for this on forensic audit.
Yeah.
Also, sir, thanks for the participation and your deliberation. We expect similar support in future, sir. Also.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, my privilege.
Thank you.
Nigam sir, also we are very thankful to you, sir, for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Future also.
Good
Thank
night.
you.